signs you will get before the heart stops. People say we don't donate in our country. Look at this figure, 113 brain deaths, 25 excluded because of sepsis or multi-organ failure, 88 counseled, and more than 40% of the time the family said yes. And this is our own data, and Mohan Foundation in the South exactly has the same figure of about 40% people saying yes. All these soldiers that you see, they have a new liver. They were dying of cirrhosis, and they've all had a liver from people who donated when they died. We were using Air Force aircrafts to transport organs throughout the country, and even the first successful heart transplant in R&R hospital in 2009. There are various organizations working in organ donation in the country. Sadly, as a government initiative, we are still waiting for things to happen. But with the new ministry in place, they are going to give it a big push. And very soon we will inaugurate what we call the NATO, the national organization. But now you'll find that gradually we are moving northwards in this map from the Mohan Foundation, which started in 1997. Tamil Nadu is the most evolved in organ donation, as is very well known in the country, and 385 organs were transplanted in 2013. Kudos to Karnataka, because they are the only state which have introduced pledging of organs at the time of making a driving license, just like happens in the United States. If you see a green sticker on a license, that means that the person has pledged his organs. I think all states should follow that. But this is the remarkable thing, that with the help of a few people that I've shown you, we have increased the organ donation rate from 0.05 to 0.26 per million population in the last about 4 to 5 years. And this is despite the system. Once things are in place, the sky is going to be the limit. And we are very upbeat about this, because this figure that I'm showing you on the right corner down below, 845 organs have been transplanted all over the country from patients who have donated, families who have donated after brain death. This figure used to be about 0 till 10 years ago. So very, very heartening. And look at the National Capital Region. We had 63 organs transplanted, and this figure was definitely 1 or 2 till about 5 or 7 years ago. And NATO, the National Organ and Tissue Transplant Organization, on Monday we have a meeting, all the hospitals here, with NATO, and soon you will hear that NATO will be starting. A few words about what we did in the Fortis hospitals. We have made an SOP, and that is being followed in most of our hospitals. We are encouraging declaration of brain death, engaging with the family, what forms are to be filled, etc., etc. And let me tell you in a few slides what exactly is the process that is being done day to day. So once an organ donor, prospective organ donor is identified, the critical care team does the initial test for brain death. And there are no sophisticated tests which are required. We just look at all the cranial nerves, and the final test in our country remains the apnea test, which this audience knows more about it than anybody else. So with the apnea test, we know that the patient is brain dead, and this is a typical monitor in one of the patients, apnea and heart rate, BP, everything is working well. And this is the thing that is very difficult to explain in our country because of lack of awareness that somebody is actually dead, but the heart is still beating. That is one concept. Therefore, the importance of increasing awareness right from the school level. Once the critical care team feels that this patient is brain dead, and there are no exclusions to organ donation like sepsis or multi-organ failure, the treating unit is informed. And I think the next part is the most crucial aspect where we are losing out in our country. We do not maintain our patients with brain death. Once there is a fixed dilated pupil, the curtains are drawn and the person is allowed to just pass away. That is the time we have to do just a few things. And what are those few things? Again, this is the audience who would be really helpful in this. Central line, fluid electrolyte management, antibiotics, red cells. In the vasopressors, we only want that vasopressin should be started first, and not just for the hypotension, but to prevent diabetes insipidus, and it also reduces the dose of catecholamines. And we want 1 injection of methylprednisolone, 15 milligram per kg, every 24 hours. That's all that the organ transplant community is asking of critical care units. It costs almost next to nothing. So let the family keep deciding, let everything happen. We must maintain that patient because it doesn't happen in a few hours. It takes 12, 24, 48 hours for the family to say yes. Once we have a donor maintenance going, the family is approached by coordinators. And this is again the importance of having the right people, trained people. Every hospital now is expected to have a good trained transplant coordinator. And this is a program that we ran for our coordinators in our hospital from all over the country earlier this year. Once the family says yes also, we know that they are okay. We do the first set of formal brain death testing, then the second one, we declare the patient brain dead, we declare the patient dead. So the death certificate is also filled while the heart is still beating, and then we go ahead with police clearance if required, and the organs are retrieved. So we cannot work without police in organ donation because all road accidents are medico-legal. So the positive attitude of the police people, interstate coordination, green corridors for transportation. So the police has to be engaged. And this notice that I am showing you, I think is one of the most significant in the country. What happens is that an accident happens in Faridabad and the patient is brought to Gurgaon, and then who is going to give the clearance, the Faridabad police or the Gurgaon police? So this is where Tamil Nadu really took the lead, and they said that the inquest, without waiting for arrival of officers from far off places, will be conducted by the local jurisdiction. And very recently, this was of course another case that I'd like to show you to earlier, but 7-8 years ago, this was the retired brigadier who got shot in the head in Meerut. He was brought to R&R hospital, declared brain dead, and there was a murder, there was UP police, there was Delhi police, but we were able to get the clearance and we transplanted his organs. So wherever one puts a lot of effort, one tends to succeed in this. And this is what the Gurgaon police commissioner had to say, that he would like to see Gurgaon as the Tamil Nadu of North India. That was a very heartening statement. And we had 70 police people in our FMRI who came for a workshop to understand the process, and they all ended up pledging to donate their organs. So that was a super thing. And this was another wonderful thing. We had a dry run on 6th of August, which is the organ donation day. We moved an ambulance with police escort, see the traffic on this side, in 15 kilometers in 15 minutes in the crowded city of Delhi and Gurgaon. So the police we are engaging with at various levels to get into this more and more. So without the police, you cannot actually do organ donation. So wherever we are, we have to constantly do that. When we started our fourth program, we started having brain dead declarations in our hospitals, and till 2013, again, out of 19 families that counseled, 11 accepted. But again, because of the donor maintenance still is an issue in most of our hospitals in the country, see only 7 donations when 11 families have said yes. So this is what we all need to work at. And out of these 11 families, 3 actually approached us for organ donation. So that's another thing which all of us have to be ready for, that the families are going to say, please take the organs, and then we realize that we do not have any paperwork, we do not know what to do. So the time has come now to be doing more and more aggressively to work towards organ donation. Another wonderful trend, this is one of our donors from Fortis Hospital, Noida, and for the first time we saw that in the obituary, the family actually wrote that even in his death, his wish of donating all his organs, etc., etc. It's very nice to see that. You know, to put a 6 into 4 centimeter obituary in Times of India or any other papers costs 24,000 rupees. So I wish the newspapers would give some concessions when somebody talks about organ donation. So we need to work at every possible level. This is our website, and we have a registry where we can pledge to donate their organs. This is a card which can be carried in the pocket. It has no legal value, but it just is an awareness program, and it tells the family that yes, one is interested. And over a period of time, we've had so many celebrities in the country now who are stepping up more and more. Most recently, we had Shabana Azmi and Javed Akhtar pledging to donate their organs. So this is another wave which is now spreading and helping us in our work. We have a program in Delhi, Gurgaon called Rahagiri, where on Sundays the roads are closed to traffic and people come onto the streets and enjoy the roads. And this one boy from DPS in Gurgaon, he's at Rahagiri convinced 175 people to pledge to donate their organs. Absolutely amazing. So we brought his family to the hospital and we felicitated them. So these are the things that we need to do. And now we have this organization called Nat Health, which is the Healthcare Federation of India. And very nice to see that Healthcare Federation of India has now decided to take on organ donation as one of its key programs. And Mr. Daljit, who is our chief guest, is actually spearheading this program. And he has formed a working group, and quite a few hospitals of the country are involved. So if any of your hospitals interested in pushing the organ donation program, please get in touch with us, because this is what we are doing in Nat Health. We are aiming to have an organ donation rate of 1 per million by 2025. So with our population, that translates into huge numbers. And at state level, hospital level, we want the policy of declare all, brain death, declare all, approach all. So if we can manage that, that will be absolutely wonderful. Just a few more examples. Recently, in one of the hospitals in Delhi, we had a French citizen who had brain death, and the family donated. So the French organs were transplanted into Indian people. Another example why we need to do more and more. And this is my mother-in-law. After working for so many years in organ donation, it landed up in our own family where she had an intracranial hemorrhage, and she was declared brain dead. The hospital where she was had no facility for declaration of brain death, no brain death committee, no paperwork. So again, even when we want to donate, the hospitals are not ready. We need to really change that. So we shifted her in an ambulance to another hospital, and very happy to say that she is today alive in 5 people. And I can tell you that the feeling I saw in the family one day before the donation and one day after the donation, absolute healing takes place if you do this kind of thing. So it's a really wonderful gesture. But a lot was learnt by me during this whole personal loss, that the main issue here is that our neurophysicians, neurosurgeons, critical care teams, we don't close the loop. Even if you go and ask, is the patient brain dead? We never say that, yes, the patient is dead. We have to tell the family that the patient is no more, though the heart is beating. We have to let the grieving process start, and only then the counseling can happen. So what is happening is we do not declare brain death, so we just do not get on to the next few steps. And what we can do, especially the people in this audience, once we feel the need for it, we can set up the systems in our respective hospitals. Early identification of brain death is the clue. We can't wait for 8 o'clock in the morning. If at 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock on a December night, we find that the apnea test is positive, the next 6-8 hours are very, very vital. We can't just say we'll see in the morning rounds. So that is what we need to change, and just give the vasopressin and methylprednisolone. Rest will keep happening. And of course, awareness drives and pledging one's organs. And this is Shaurya Malik. He is one of the youngest people in the world to donate organs. He was 1.5 years old. He's a Major Siddharth Malik's son, who fell off a balcony and died, and they actually ended up donating his organs. Both his kidneys were so small that they were transplanted into one adult. So we have wonderful examples in the country, and we would like this to go on more and more. And thank you for your patient hearing.
Thank you very much, Dr. Seth. I would now like to invite our guest of honor, Professor H.L. Kaul, to please address the gathering.
Good evening. Thank you very much for inviting me, but I feel a little embarrassed. I thought this was one of those informal meetings, so I dressed informally, so I feel very sort of alone being so sort of casually dressed. So don't laugh, please. I have been out of circulation for a long time, nearly 10 years. And to get back into circulation probably will take time. But with the aging process happening here, it may never happen. So, if somebody expected that I would give a brilliant lecture on regional anesthesia, please don't expect that. But what I could do is, my only request is, please stop me if I go into history, because then I don't stop. So I will try not to go into the history. But two things that I have learned in life, that's another problem. When you say two things, you tend to forget the second thing. You talk about the first thing only. Anyway, the thing that I learned was that there is always scope for learning. Learning process does not stop. A few years ago, I was working in Brunei. The department got an ultrasound unit for regional anesthesia, and then they used to give demonstrations of that, and they used to invite me there. And we had a very sort of old joke. I said, you can never make an old dog learn new tricks. So whatever I have learned, I will not learn anything new. But then one day, one of these young fellows got the machine, and he said he wants to try this. Can you please stand by and help? And then I suddenly realized that it was not very difficult. I had already learned it by watching those people. So I think if we keep a mind open, we will probably be doing learning and probably helping others to learn as well. Now, I wanted to pay homage to a person who was one of the only two Asians to become the president of the World Federation. He was a Malaysian by the name of Lim Sewan. Lim Sewan was a very, very good medical administrator, and among so many things that he did, one of the things that he did was he pushed us to start what later on became the Asian Oceanic Society of Regional Anesthesia and Pain Medicine. And his sort of forceful advocacy of having a regional anesthesia society of the Asian region to be sort of equal to what we already had in America, the ASRA we had in Europe, ESRA. So we were able to successfully start OSRA, and then over a period of time we had 8 or 10 meetings. I think the 10th meeting ultimately was held in Rio de Janeiro in Brazil. That was then became the World Congress of Regional Anesthesia Societies somewhere in, I think, 2008 or 2009. But he was a person who could be emulated because of the force with which he would try and induct you into something that he believed in. In my institute, I still call it my institute, it's no longer my institute, in All India Institute of Medical Sciences, we had a very good tradition. The Department of Anesthesia started somewhere in mid-50s, and at that time, we already had a pain clinic started and running. And something which is very unusual nowadays, we had allotted space in the OPD for running a clinic. We had access to the operation theater in the outpatient department where we could do the procedures. We had facility of X-ray. At that time, X-ray was the only investigation that you could use. And all of us as students had to go through that. So our interest in regional anesthesia was sort of part of the build-up of our career. Eventually, my colleague, former colleague, Dr. Saini, Professor Saini, he started much later, after a gap of nearly 15 years, he started a small unit. By then, we had already lost the space in the outpatient department. We had lost all the staff that we used to get. So he started in a small way, and eventually he carried on. When they shifted to Neurosciences Center, he continued to do this job there also. We took time to start a pain clinic, but by the time I left the institute, it was a sort of well-known asset in the Department of Anesthesia. We were doing quite a lot of procedures. There were quite a lot of satisfied patients. The only problem I felt as an administrator was that you had to push people to get into this. There were very few people who would accept regional anesthesia and pain medicine as a career option. They would do probably 1 hour a week or 2 hours a week, but not sort of divert their whole time and attention to doing this job. And those who did, they did very well. And one of the examples, I don't mind naming the person, was our Dr. Dureja, who put in a lot of effort and eventually ended up doing mostly regional anesthesia and pain management work after his retirement. So I think when you sort of go about it, you find that there is always a lot more to learn. And I would end up by giving you that famous slogan, which was coined many years ago. It says, see one, do one, and teach one. And that is probably the best slogan we can have for regional anesthesia and pain management. I once again thank the organizers for inviting me and wish them well. I probably forgot to mention that we had a society called Asian and Oceanic Society of Regional Anesthesia and Pain Medicine. I think it is still there. I happen to be president for some time of that society. I forgot which years that was. I was asking Professor Dash whether this academy had any relationship with that, but I don't think they are connected. But so long as you are doing something which is academic, it's good for the profession, it's good for the people. One thing in regional anesthesia is that it's mostly hands-on. You have to practice it to become perfect. So it's not something like our other subjects where you can read the library and become expert. So the more you do it, better you will be. And with these workshops and these conferences, I think you will always tend to get more and more interested and excited and try and do more and more of regional anesthesia work. And thank you very much for inviting me here. Sorry for boring you. I tried very hard not to go into the history. Thank you very much for your patience.
I hardly think anyone was bored, sir. And I was just taking a look around the room. I don't think anyone paid attention to what you're wearing. They were probably just hanging on to every word that you were saying. So thank you very much for the words of encouragement as well as the thoughts that you've left us with. And now I would like to invite our chief guest, Mr. Daljit Singh. Please come and address us.
I think the presentation on organ donation is open, so I was tempted to start it all over again. So good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this esteemed panel, especially Professor Kaul, a very, very senior clinician, one of the most respected persons in this domain, and fellow friends. I am a chemical engineer. I'm not a doctor like you. And therefore, I will not even try and pretend that I know the ABCs of anesthesia. But I have been involved. I've been in in the corporate world for just over 40 years. I've just completed 40 years of active work in the professional domain. The first 28 years were with a company called ICI India, where I happened to be the chief executive of pharmaceuticals at a point in time. And that's when I headed the manufacturing division first and then headed the business. And I realized that our organization had done a lot of work in the field of medicine. Our organization had, we had inventors, people who developed propranolol, who developed atenolol drugs for which Nobel Prizes were awarded. Our organization was a discoverer of halothane. Our organization was a discoverer of propofol, and I had the unique distinction of actually getting the first imports of propofol into the country in the mid-90s. And I think it's been a fantastic journey to know that we've been able to impact lives in the work that we've done. And after that, when I left ICI, which was in 2002, I had the opportunity to join Fortis Healthcare, and I've been with the organization for just over 12 years. But I really feel that these last 12 years have been really worth my while. Like I said, I don't pretend to understand medicine, but I do think that over the last 12 years has certainly sensitized me to a lot more in this entire domain of caring for people. I think all of us belong to a fraternity, and when I talk about a fraternity, I'm talking about the larger healthcare worker community, if you like, where we are actually privileged to be spending all our working time in doing something which is alleviating pain and misery of people. I don't know of any other profession which actually comes close to this. And when I was reflecting, I remember about almost 15, 20 years ago when I was much younger, all of us, people like me, we had aspirations to work for a lot of multinational corporations. Many of them are great multinational corporations, but even organizations which are selling soft drinks or selling cigarettes. Why? Because they offered great salaries, they offered great lifestyles. I think if I had to relive my life all over again and go back into the time, I don't think I'd ever want to work for organizations that would not impact human life in a positive manner. And we are indeed very, very unique in that sense that not only do we have an opportunity to impact life in a positive manner every minute of our working time, but we also have the dual advantage of getting actually paid for it. I think it's a double positive, and I don't think any other profession actually gives us that unique opportunity. So we should be thankful to God, thankful to whatever power that we believe in, that we have been given the unique opportunity to serve in whichever capacity, as doctors, as most of you are, as administrators, people like myself, and all those in the domain. I think I would like to touch upon the issues that we face in the field of healthcare, the challenges that we face as a country. I don't want to be speaking about developments in anesthesia. I think you're all well aware of that. You're also well aware of the directions in which it is going. So you're probably going to go into nanotechnology, robotics, small particles going into your streams and attaching themselves to receptors and taking away all sensation. And these are going to be non-biological developments that are going to help the cause of anesthesia and alleviate pain. But I think let's talk about a slightly larger issue. All of us have a role to play in organizations. So you are anesthetists, I'm an administrator, somebody else is a nurse, somebody else is whatever, a financial person. We all also have an ability to impact healthcare in a much wider sense. So we do our functional work, but we also help the health status of our country, and we have the ability to impact that in a positive manner. And I'll like to share with you some thoughts around that. If you look at our country today, we have the classic conundrum, which exists in probably most parts of the world. We suffer from an issue of affordability, accessibility, quality, and I think the fourth issue is a softer issue. It's to do with a deficit in the area of trust that today exists between our profession and between the people who actually avail of our services. And we need to tackle all four of these in a sustainable manner. Today, if you look at our own country, we are very privileged to be in places like, in the larger cities like New Delhi, Calcutta. We are also very privileged to be amongst probably the best paid people in the country, all of us. We all earn more than what we need. We all have a lot of extra that we generate, which gives us a lifestyle which probably most of our people in the country cannot afford. But the fact of the matter is that in the domain of healthcare today, about 70% of all our country's people do not have accessibility to the type of healthcare that all of us just take for granted today. More than 95% of all specialists, people like yourselves, people like Dr. Avnish Seth and others, they are concentrated in the larger cities. The people do not have an ability to pay for services. Even if you had the money in those towns, etc., people don't know where to go to for hospitals, but there aren't any hospitals there. There are a few government facilities, I'm sure smaller nursing homes, etc., but they are grossly inadequate to serve the needs of the people in those areas. There's a huge amount of unregulated work which is happening. And a lot of that is good work. People from different fields of medicine, Ayush, as we call it, are also doing some very good work. But whilst very good work is being done at one end, obviously a lot of unregulated, probably unethical work is also happening in other domains. But the net result of that is that there is uneven distribution and accessibility of healthcare, and a lot of our countrymen today do not have the ability to access or pay for healthcare, and that's a domain which actually needs to be cracked. If you look at India as a country, we spend about $50 on an average per annum per person on healthcare. At the other end of the spectrum is US, which spends about $8,000 per annum per person. And US is not necessarily the best example for quality healthcare. In spite of spending probably more than double of the next country in the pecking order, its clinical outcomes are today, it's ranked about 50th in terms of the quality, in terms of the clinical outcomes, in terms of the effectiveness of healthcare. So more spending doesn't necessarily mean that you're doing a great job. But the fact of the matter is that today, in our country, we are well below whatever you may describe as minimum standards. And these are issues which need to be tackled. And they need to be tackled by all of us. It doesn't matter whether I work in the private sector or Dr. Cole and many of you work in the public sector. The private sector of our country, the public sector of our country belongs to our country. It doesn't belong to somebody else. And all our entire role of what we do is to provide healthcare, to provide tertiary care treatment, secondary care treatment, primary care treatment to people so that we can alleviate pain, etc. In the private sector, my need is that I have to generate a surplus in order to invest back in growing the facilities. In the public sector, it's largely to do with pure social good, and any deficit in financing comes in from the government, and the government gets its money from all of us when we pay our taxes. So the end objective is the same. The means are perhaps a little different, but we are all in it in the same way, and we all need to deliver healthcare in the same manner. And the issue in front of us today, which is also staring us at the face, which I mentioned very briefly, is around this element of trust deficit that we do need as a country, as a profession, to alleviate the image of healthcare professionals, be it in the private sector or the public sector. Today, the public trusts us less because of varying practices, because of varying motivations, and it doesn't matter whether it's in the private or the public sector. The profession gets a bad name. And we need to think about it and see that in the domains that we actually work in, what is it that we can do to address this issue. I have the unique opportunity of being on several steering boards at the World Economic Forum on healthy living, on sustainable healthcare, et cetera, et cetera. And I also have the unique opportunity to meet many thought leaders in this domain. And there are several themes that the world is now beginning to think of in terms of the way healthcare is going to evolve in the coming decades. I mean, we call ourselves a healthcare industry, but frankly, we are managers for people who are sick. So we are really in the sick care business. We are not in the business of creating healthy people. It's only when the damage is done, when the heart attack has happened, or when the damage is done, do they actually come to our hospitals, to All India Institute of Medical Sciences, or Fortis, or Max, or Apollo, any other good institution, where all of us tend to set right that particular accident, correct it, and send the person back home in a reasonable condition so that he or she could go back and live a normal life. But all that is in the domain when accidents have taken place. I think the world now necessarily needs to move to a very different paradigm. And the paradigm is that how do we bring health to the forefront? How do we have a focus on positive health rather than negative stuff? We all think if we put down what the priorities are, health would be a very important priority to all of us. But perhaps in the way that we conduct ourselves, in our lifestyles, and what we eat, drink, exercise, etc., in spite of all the knowledge that we may have, we probably are not very compliant to what we would term as healthy living. And therefore, a lot of debate, a lot of focus is today being attached to the fact that we need to move to a domain of healthy living, which is about being proactive about our health, which really means that how do we create an ecosystem in our country, amongst people, amongst children, from the time that they are very, very young, that what is right eating, what is right living, what is right exercise, so that when we grow up, our habits are good habits, and we don't fall prey to diseases early on, so that the healthy part of our lives is far more productive. Today, while all health is to do with the damage, it's not to do with anything. No school curriculum has health. No lady who's had a child, no parent is actually given instructions on how to bring up a child in a healthy manner. It's not a curriculum in primary school, it's not a curriculum in secondary school, and certainly not in colleges. So we are all creatures of habits which are wrong habits, and we need to change that paradigm, and we need to create an ecosystem which is going to be proactive. The second aspect that I think the country needs to focus on very largely is in the area of technology. That how is technology going to impact us in a positive manner? Technology is becoming all pervasive. The profession that all of you mostly are in, anesthesia, I don't know whether 20, 30 years from now, the role of the anesthetist is going to be what it is today. This is a role which came up probably 60, 70 years ago, formalized, equivalent to a doctor at that point in time. And as this evolves further, I think there's going to be a greater convergence of roles. There are going to be technologists, computer scientists, who are all going to come in there, and there's going to be a fair bit of gray which is going to come in, and roles of everybody. If you were to transport yourself 50 years from now, you probably may not find a terminology called anesthetist, around. Maybe it'll be in a very different form. But technology is going to be a very major driver for the way this world is actually going to work. Everybody is wearing wearable devices. Information is getting online. Treatments are becoming more and more technology-led. They're becoming far more targeted, and therefore the concept of medical treatment and addressing all these issues is going to undergo quite dramatic change. So we need to embrace, and we'll need to look at what the next frontiers in technology are going to be. And this is going to be moving at a much, much faster pace than we can probably imagine. The third thing that I would like to talk about in this domain is around data. Big data is becoming a big deal today in the world. We treat millions of patients, crores of patients in our country, but data is probably just not available. And we talk about averages. Averages are very, very misleading. It does average tells me what is the overall propensity, but doesn't tell me where the problem is. And data registries need to be created. I think jointly, it'll have to be done by the government, has to be the owner, but a lot of private sector companies will need to work in order to capture data, in order to mine data, in order to analyze it, to give us meanings, defining meanings, so that we can work around strategies to create prevention, to make treatment happen, et cetera, et cetera. It's going to be a very major thing. Fourth thing, I believe that the role of medical practitioners is going to change quite dramatically. A lot of medical practitioners will need to necessarily move away from the domain of simple treatment to becoming health coaches. So people will need to advise their own not yet patients on how to remain healthy on an ongoing basis, because the medical profession will, in the coming years, be necessarily held accountable for outcomes, for success. So today, if I buy a car, there's a guarantee which says the car will work, and it's a maintenance-free thing. I think today, when people come to us in hospitals, we don't give them any guarantee. And you may well say that it's very complex. Yes, it is complex. But overall, the world is not going to wait for us. The next few years, we are going to see this happening in a very significant manner. US is already beginning to see this as part of Obamacare, that hospital organizations are going to be paid for outcomes and not for just doing surgeries or repeat redos, et cetera, et cetera. I think we need to rejig the way we are thinking about our roles as healthcare professionals. And therefore, accountability has to be extremely sharp. And now I come to the final point, that what is it that all of us can do? We are all specialists in our own domain, but we are all also experienced and learned people. I think the sort of passion with which Dr. Avnish Seth has taken on a role which is beyond what his technical role is in healthcare delivery is something that we must all begin to examine. We all have a lot of experience. We can contribute to the development of this sector in significant manners. I think we need to expand our thought process, our perspectives, and look at how each one of us can actually contribute to alleviating and meeting the challenges that exist in front of all of us. I think I would leave that as a thought with all of you. And with those few words, I would like to also congratulate all the organizers for having taken, made the effort to bring such a fantastic group of people together to deliberate on developments on anesthesia, regional anesthesia, and to see how these developments are actually going to help in the delivery of patient care. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Daljit sir. I don't think he even realizes what a tower of strength and inspiration he is for a lot of us at Fortis. Which is why I would like to invite Dr. Vishnu Panigrahi and Dr. Dash to present a token of appreciation to our chief guest and our guest of honor. Thank you. And I would like to call upon Dr. Om Prakash to propose a vote of thanks.
Well, it's my privilege to propose the vote of thanks for the 4th National Conference of Academy of Regional Anesthesia of India. At the outset, I would like to express my profound gratitude to our Honorable Chief Guest, Mr. Daljit Singh, President, Fortis Healthcare Limited, for sparing his valuable time to address the gathering. He has a pivotal role in formulating and implementing Fortis growth strategies to position it as India's leading healthcare delivery organization in a very short span. I would even like to express my sense of obligations to our guest of honor, Professor Dr. H.L. Kaul, that ex-head of the Department of Anesthesiology and Intensive Care, AIIMS, for his contributions towards the field of anesthesiology. He had been an able guide and teacher to many of the renowned names in the field of anesthesiology. I convey my sincere thanks to the Core Committee of Academy of Regional Anesthesia of India for providing us the opportunity to host this event. Aora has witnessed tremendous growth and popularity among anesthesiologists under the leadership of Dr. J. Balavenkat, Founder-President, Dr. Rushali Pandey, Founder-Secretary and Trustee, and Dr. T.V.S. Gopal, Founder Academic Director. I sincerely thank Dr. Vishnu Panigrahi, Group Head, Medical Strategy and Operations, Fortis Healthcare Limited, for his role in implementing highest standard of care across the Fortis network in the country. I extend my gratitude to Dr. Dilpreet Bra, Regional Director, NCR 4, Fortis Healthcare Limited, for her pivotal role in making this conference a reality. My sincere thanks to Dr. Pushpa Bishnoi, the Civil Surgeon, cum District Appropriate Authority, Gurgaon, for her timely response during the course towards organizing the workshop on 21st. I would like to extend my thanks to our event management company, Summit Alpcard Network, for their tireless and constant efforts in organizing and efficiently managing this conference. I thank all the staff members of Lee Meridian for their warm hospitality and timely availability. I would fail in my duty if I don't convey my thanks to our sponsors, Sonosite, Neon, Abbott, Fresenius Kabi, Claris Otsuka, and others for supporting this conference. I extend my gratitude to our eminent faculty for their excellent knowledge sharing. I also thank our delegates for their presence to make this event a success. My sincere thanks to Dr. H.S. Dash, Director, Department of Anesthesia, FMRI, Dr. Deep Aora, and Dr. Shivani Das for their able guidance in organizing this conference. I thank Dr. Rani Sundar for excellently planning the scientific program. My sincere thanks to Jasrita and her team for their efforts in supporting us. I thank Nikita also for her all the efforts in mastering the ceremony throughout these 2 days process. I extend my thanks to Dr. Abhishek for enlightening us on the challenges faced for organ transplant in India. Lastly, I thank all the members of the organizing committee who have been involved in this particular exercise for last several months. Without their cooperation and full support, the conference would not have been possible. Thank you all once again, and looking forward to an extremely productive Congress. Thank you.
There's hardly any work I'm doing, but it's always nice to be thanked. And now I think what we have for you is a musical evening by a piano maestro, Brian Salas. You just have to give us a few minutes to set up the piano here, and then the dinner is served after that. Okay, I'm just being told the 5 minutes might take 15, so please bear with us.